My mum got me to join this woodturning hobby at a shed in Kalora after going to a show where she met a couple of the teachers from the woodturning who told her about it, where she told me I could join up with the woodturning that I now go to every Saturday morning to afternoon. This woodturning is one of the best things for me that my mum discovered. I can make my own wooden structures by hand, with sometimes a little help from my members. It was only a couple of weeks back that my interest with the woodturning started to change. It's sad to know, but it has nothing to do with the woodturning. It has something to do with this thing that went by the street and block of Kalora. A thing I can't really describe, that no one could possibly do in my ways if I try. I'd call it a living nightmare, because as I know it is beyond anyone's intelligence to understand the purpose of whatever this thing is, I did see and know what it did. It caused damage. Damage to this area, and damage quite possibly to myself, as it may have used me and may always stick around with me. Now before I go any further, I know that you all may be confused with what I'm saying, so I put it in more clearer details and start back on a day I and a couple of my woodturning buddies discovered that thing. I was out in the garden because after working on something for quite a while, I get easily tired and like to take a break and walk through it and inhale some fresh air. After getting enough time to myself, while walking back to work on my project again, I stopped in my tracks to hear a Mr. Rippy truck playing close and loud, but doesn't seem to get closer as the music doesn't approach. After a while of enjoying the music, I worry for my sanity when I think to myself how the truck moved at least a few hundred meters down the road when a second later, the loud music seemed soft and far within the next second, like the ice cream truck drove through some kind of portal, travelling at the speed of light. I couldn't think it's possible, so walked back and explained my crazy imagination to Andrew, a co-worker at the woodturning shed. He giggled and told me that the sound of a faraway distance noise can travel through the atmosphere, making something far away seem near, making it louder, causing people to think it is much closer than it is. That had to be it, I thought to myself. I walked past Andrew, over to the fridge, but when I came back to sit on a chair next to Andrew, he starts freaking out as I asked him if everything's okay. He pauses for a few moments before telling me that he saw me at the fridge, and then a second later, I was sitting directly next to him, as I was. He noticed when he turned his head. He told me he didn't even see me flash past him. I just so happened to have appeared next to him, and strangely enough, I couldn't remember walking over to the chair before sitting next to him. It's like that Mr. Rippy truck affected me in some way. We can't all be losing our heads, right? But something to have happened that would be quite similar out of a Twilight Zone series is just impossible. What we did next was think of a possible reasonable excuse to what was going on. Then a few minutes after comprehending, we all just went back to our work. A little while later, Jessica, the wife of Andrew, pointed that she could smell something burning. I and Andrew could smell it as well. There was music playing, getting nearer from down the road. It was all broken and crackly, and then I noticed that it was the music coming from that Mr. Rippy truck earlier. I walked outside the shed and out the gates and stood at the edge of the road to look down the road and saw a Mr. Rippy truck that had smoke rising out of its engine. But not only the engine, but strangely enough the window, which was kind of an odd place for fire to start. All the side bars around the windscreen started melting. The wiper plastic melted into the windscreen. It slowly cruised past, and I noticed that no one was driving it. It's strange because I assumed whoever was driving the Mr. Rippy truck before came into some kind of an accident and jumped out, but the way it slowly cruised down the road was like it was in control of itself, because it just kept going down. Even though the road is straight, I would have thought that eventually it would have run off to the gutter. The fire was nowhere near the fuel tank. It must be safe to investigate. I ran to the Rippy truck and hopped in. Straight away as I got in, a nice smell of melted ice cream that had gone bad in the heat hit me. Not only the ice cream that were melted, but some had stamps on them indicating date, which was weeks out of date, which is strange. Why wouldn't anyone replace them? Had anyone noticed it at all? I'm sure someone must have at the headquarters. It's almost like this ice cream truck hadn't been attended by anyone in a while and was just forgotten. It was a mess. The ice cream was everywhere. Then I smelt something else. The sickest smell anyone could possibly smell. It came from the back of the van in some heat machine. Before I opened the machine, I put my head outside to breathe in some air. A weird colour oozed down the side of the machine. I opened it and it was the ice cream driver. He was dumped face first in the ice cream generator. Flesh was completely melted into it. His blood oozed down the side, and when I turned to look away, nearly being sick, I saw in another tub of melted ice cream that some of him was also melted in there, mixed with the ice cream, and he also drained out of the ice cream tap. It really looked like a cannibal's ice cream. A loud alarm started going off. I jumped back and fell on my side on top of one of the flesh melted tubs. My hands were either side of it on the floor holding me up before my face fell in. It was a smoke detector. I almost forgot this van was ablaze. It was now a lot larger than it was before, at the point where it could blow any second. I got up from my hands and knees, and I made my way out of there and rushed back onto the footpath. Luckily, it was still somehow travelling on the road. It erupts into a large ball of flame, then explodes. Andrew and Jessica came out, but I had no idea what to say to them. Even though they are both reasonable, an ice cream truck driving on its own with a melted human massacre scene inside before I escaped in time sounds a little unbelievable. So I just told them that some homicide took place in the truck and someone must have lit it to hide the evidence. What about the driver? Someone was driving it, said Andrew. The driver was the one who was murdered. In the truck that I was driving, there was a brick on the pedal, and the accelerator was on. I wanted to tell them what I saw, but it sounded too crazy. Andrew went back inside with Jessica, and he called the police to investigate, but the truck was already far too burnt to find anything out. It eventually stopped 2 blocks down from the wood-turning shed. I don't think the police would have pieced up what was going on. The only thing about what I told them that they now think hard about was the pedal being controlled, not the steering. They know that there is no possible way it could have gotten down the blocks on its own. I probably quite possibly told them half the story, but it wasn't all true. I know what I saw, and I know that the truck was in control of itself. I also know it appeared a long way down the road within a split second, and it also affected me in some way. I remember now that I wasn't even planning on sitting down. After going to the fridge, I was going to head back to my work, but somehow appeared next to Andrew without knowing. I don't even understand it all myself. Where did that whippy truck come from? Who sent it? I myself may have been inside it, but that is probably only a small part. There is still a giant puzzle behind that truck that I will never know, and it may be the beginning of something. We never understood what happened that day, or what that van was about. But could we possibly be connected to something out there?